to the What's Your Dream podcast. Today, we're excited to have Liam Naden join us. Liam is a speaker, teacher, writer, and serial entrepreneur with expertise in more than 18 businesses. His work combines brain science, psychology, self help, religion, and spirituality to help us understand the true source of success and how to live in the flow of our true selves. In this episode, Liam will explain the true purpose of life, how our brain ensures we will achieve it, and why many struggle by misusing their brain, which he describes as a success machine. He'll also introduce his four-part brain model and discuss the common flaws in goal setting that keep us from reaching our potential. Get ready for a transformative session with Liam Naden. Hello, Liam. How are you today?
I'm great, Tricia. Hi there, and thanks very much for having me on your show.
Thank you for joining us. I'm really excited to discuss all the things about what's going on in your world and what your dreams are and how you're making all of them happen.
Great.
All right. I will get started with the first question, and that is, what is your biggest dream or aspiration?
Well, I used to be the sort of person that had lots of dreams about being rich and having lots of stuff, and a house, nice boat, being able to travel the world. But really, when I got all of those things, I realized they weren't all the be all and end all. And my dream now is to allow myself to live my dreams by focusing on the here and now. Because what I discovered after going from a multi-millionaire and discovering all my dreams to becoming homeless and losing everything, and then rebuilding my life in a completely different way, in a far better way, what I realized is there's a whole different aspect to what we actually want and how we actually get it than, unfortunately, what most of us have been taught. Because most of what we've been taught about how we achieve our dreams, all it really does is keep us stuck. And I think if you ask most people, they would say, yeah, I'm not really living my dreams. I am pretty stuck. So that's my dream now, is to use this. We can talk about the brain, but to really tap into my dreams in a way to allow them to unfold rather than going after them. And when you do that, what I found is magic really happens in your life.
Yes, I would totally agree with that. And I think talking about the brain is one of my favorite things in the whole world. And how it works and all the neuroscience behind it, manifesting. I absolutely love talking about all of that. And you're absolutely right. People, they're stuck because they're do. The more I do, the more I make. The more I do, the more I make. And it's not true. It actually does. Like you said, it keeps them in this stuck mode of do. And they're not even open to receiving the things that they're trying to get to come into their lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Awesome. Okay, so this is the second question. What makes you feel grateful and full of joy today?
Just being here. I mean, what we sort of don't see the big picture for what it is about who we are. But once you start to become aware of what's really going on, not only in your own life, but around you, it's so incredible. You could literally spend your whole life just being in awe of who you are. So you don't need to look very far to be grateful and feel inspired in your life, because it's all around you. But most of us, of course, we're caught up in our thoughts and in our problems and in using the wrong part of our brain that keeps us stuck with a very limited awareness. So we don't see all the things we can be grateful for. You don't need to have $1 million to feel happy. You can feel happy with what you've got right now, because what we have right now is incredible.
Absolutely. Oh, yes. We definitely don't sit with that enough these days, for sure. So, what has caused you to be able to travel and been able to, how did you get where you are as far as traveling, sitting in an RV right now, being able to explore?
Well, it's funny how things happen in your life, isn't it? And I can't remember who it was who said, life's what happens when you're busy making other plans. I think it might have been a song by John Lennon. But it was really very much that case for me, because most of my life I have been a driven success seeker, really wanting to make the best of my life, setting big goals, achieving things. I didn't want to just have a mediocre life. I had big dreams. But it was a few years ago, something really strange happened to me that really was the reason why I'm here where I am talking to you right now. And that was, I remember it was, I just built a magnificent new home. It was my dream home, and I remember going into my music room. I'd even built a music room because I'd been a musician earlier in life. And I remember going into my music room one day, and it was just such a beautiful day, and the sun was streaming in, and looking out over the mountains in the distance. We had this marvelous piece of land with a view, and we had horses in the paddocks in front of us. And I thought, I'm living my dreams here. This is what I've always wanted. I was a multi-millionaire. I had 3 businesses that I was running at the time, and I'd done a lot of travel. I had an ideal lifestyle, but instead of feeling really wonderfully excited and grateful for my life, I felt absolutely terrible. I was so stressed, I was almost at breaking point. And I just had a row with my wife at the time. And I was sitting there thinking, why can't I enjoy this? This is what I've always wanted, my dream home, my dream life. But I feel terrible. It's like I can't appreciate, I've got so many problems. I've got so much stress. I've got so many parts of my life that aren't working. I can't enjoy what I've got. And I thought, this is absolutely crazy. I've achieved my dreams, but I can't enjoy it. And there are parts of my life that are full of problems. And so I remember even thinking, or a voice or something, I just had this idea, would you rather lose everything or lose your soul? And I said to myself, I'd give all of this away instantly if I got my soul, because that's what I feel I've lost. I've lost this joy for life, even though I've got so much wonderful stuff to be grateful for. Well, it's funny, because you have to be careful what you think or what you wish for, because it was literally within a couple of months that I went from that to losing everything and becoming homeless. The house went, the music room went, the businesses, the marriage, all my money, everything I had, all just went. And I ended up having to move in with my elderly mother and sleep on the sofa in the living room of her small apartment. And when I said I'd be prepared to lose everything to get my soul back, I didn't realize what everything really meant, how hard it was. It was the most difficult thing I ever faced. And I was again really stressed, really unhappy. But above all, I was confused because I remember saying to myself as I was lying on the sofa, why has this happened to me? Because I'm an expert on success, because not only had I become incredibly successful, I was also an expert on personal development, self-help, spirituality, mind control, beliefs, using the brain, the subconscious mind, all of these things, I had all these goals, I was motivated. So I thought, why has this happened to me? Because this wasn't on my goals list to lose everything. And the other thing I thought was, the other thing, I was so confused and stressed was, what do I do now? I don't know how to get out of this. And what I did in that moment, and it was actually a moment, I did something that in any other situation I would never have done, but it was the key. And what it was that instead I said to myself, I'm not going to try and figure this out anymore. I'm not going to try and get out of this hole anymore. I'm not going to try and plan and strategize and try and work out how to do this. I'm just going to give up. I'm going to let it all go. I don't care anymore. Well, something weird happened from that moment on, because really it didn't take too long before all these things started showing up. A business showed up, another business showed up, then a third business showed up, a great relationship showed up. And I was starting to do these things, and there were these synchronicities that were happening. Before I knew it, I was traveling around in a motorhome, you call them an RV, around New Zealand, my home country, for 18 months. So I bought a brand new luxury RV motorhome and traveled in it for 18 months. Then I went sailing around Europe, around 15 countries over 8 years. And then after that, bought another RV in Europe, and all of these things. And it was just so many things, one after the other, and they just kept snowballing. And I thought, this is so weird, because before I was really trying hard. I was really trying to plan things, set clear goals, and work very consciously towards them, getting as much information as I could and trying to overcome all those struggles. But I got the opposite. It didn't work. And now I'm not trying, I'm not doing all those things, and it's all falling into a place. So I said, and I remember thinking, as I was on the, I think it was when I was on the boat one day, and I just got out of the water. Imagine being in a beautiful bay in the Greek islands, and you just wake up in the morning, you fall off the back of the boat, and you're running three businesses from around the world remotely, and they're all going really well, relationships going well, and you're not really dealing with any stress and problems. And I remember thinking, this is what I signed up for.
Yep.
This is
Yep.
what success is. This is what life is. I'm in the flow. I'm in this marvelous place of no resistance and just great things keep happening. And I thought, I want to know what's going on here. I want to figure out what's going on because something different is. I don't want to mess this up. And that's what that pivoted me really to do what I do now, which is share with people that there is another way to get real success in your life, and not just in one area, when then dealing with a whole lot of problems all the time and saying, well, problems and stress are a natural part of success. That's not true. There is a way to have this balance, this fulfillment in your life, but it comes from doing something quite differently. And I was really fortunate to be forced to find out what that was by going through the, harrowing experience of losing everything. But I'm so glad I did, because it got me off that terrible place we often become when we're success seekers. We're stuck and we're stressed and we don't know where to turn other than trying to work harder, which doesn't work.
Yes, I completely agree with that. And what a story. That is amazing. And I mean, I feel like things are put into our life, or we create instances in our life that are going to help us help others with the same thing. So I feel like that's exactly what you're doing right now, is helping others discover how to get unstuck. And I feel like I've definitely been in that place. I've been a business owner for the last 13 years, and I've been in the place of stuck and not having a clue how to move forward. And I'm like, okay, I give up. I give up. I'm going to take a vacation. And the times that I've done that, I've made more money than any other month in my business. So it is absolutely true. And it's, we get on like a cycle of life and we can't get off. And so it takes somebody like you to be able to help us, guide us through the stuckness.
Yeah, and it's actually really simple what I discovered, because here we overthink things, we overcomplicate things. But here's the most important thing that I discovered, and really this is so simple and so basic, that when I discovered it, and when we talk about it, people say, why didn't I think of that years ago rather than struggling? But here's the thing: nature, this world that we live in, this natural world, nature rules. Nature overrides everything, and nature has rules. Nature operates in certain ways. Now, if you don't think that's true, because we're all busy out there struggling against nature, and we forget that there's this natural world that we're a part of that we can't fight against. I mean, if you want to stand on top of a 10-story building, you can pray, you can meditate, you can convince yourself, you can do all of the mind control techniques in the world about reprogramming your mind. But if you go off a 10-story building, you're not going to fly up in the air, you're going to go down. Nature, it doesn't care about any of what you think you want or what you should do. It has specific rules. And nature has a biological rule. And this is probably the most important thing that I discovered and realized, is that nature is wired for one purpose. All of biological life has one primary purpose. And if you ask any biological scientist, they will tell you this is true. The one primary purpose of all life, and that includes our life, is to survive. That's what everything is wired to do. Now, we might think, well, that's pretty obvious. But what does that actually mean? What it means is that everything is designed to give itself the greatest chance for survival, and it can only do that by being the best that it can be. So when something is as good as it can be, it has the greatest chance for survival. So biology is constantly, for every organism, striving to make everything the best that it can be for that purpose. Nature even has a word for this called homeostasis, which means the optimum functioning of the organism. But for us as humans, we're the only species that exists that isn't in the state of homeostasis, isn't being the best that we can be. Because if you ask most people, are you being the best that you can be? Is your life going as well as it could? They would say no. And so that really puzzled me when I discovered this. I thought, well, why, if the biological purpose, the way nature, and this is as natural as the law of gravity, this law of biological success, if all of nature is designed to be the best that it can be, why aren't we? And it turns out we're doing something wrong. We're doing something different to all of the rest of nature. And that's the cause of all of our problems. And that's why we stay stuck. And all you need to do is to get back into the natural flow of how you're designed to work, how nature is designed to create success for every living thing, including you. And that's when things happen in a much more efficient, predictable, and enjoyable way. Because remember, part of being biologically successful, part of being the best that you can be, is being happy. Because when you're happy, when you're fulfilled, when you're doing all of the things that make you feel good, that's when you're being the best that you can be as well.
Yeah, and I believe that we were given all of the tools we need to be like we have all of it in us already. Sometimes you just have to start on that personal development journey and start searching for it. And I think even just to your point, spending time in nature is one of the most important things you can do when you're in that process of really becoming the best version of yourself, because it returns your body back to the homeostasis as well.
Yes, but that's absolutely right. And how many of us actually take the time to go into nature and even be aware of what's going on? Because if you really observe nature closely for any time, you see there is no struggle, there is no failure. You know, if you look at a bird or a plant or an animal or whatever, it's just being itself. And if it needs food, it finds food. If it needs to do something, it's just the best version of itself. But here's the really interesting thing that if I, just to elaborate what we're talking about what to do about this, because again, the thing to realize, what I've discovered, is the process of understanding how to be the best that you can be. In other words, how to use your biology is completely natural. Every living thing is designed naturally to do it this way. But we, unfortunately, have developed all of these false ideas, false beliefs, and false habits that mean we aren't doing naturally. So all you need to do is realize what being natural is and do it. And it just requires a very simple switch. And many of the people I work with get this pretty well instantly. And as soon as you get this idea, your life goes in a different direction. And I think it's about understanding, first off, that nature is designed to ensure that we're the best that we can be so that we have the greatest chance for survival. And it's provided a mechanical, biological mechanism tool for that to happen. And that is a brain. So a brain is the thing, if you like, that every living organism has been provided with the one sole purpose, and that is to ensure that that organism is the best that it can be so it has the greatest chance for survival. So that's what our brain is designed to do for us. That's its job. That's it. And it is just a machine. It works like a machine. It has a particular way of working, a particular job to do, and a particular outcome it's designed to get. So if you think about another machine like a motor car, we know what a motor car is. It's a machine that's designed to get you from where you are to where you want to go. And it's designed to do it predictably, enjoyably. You don't have to wonder if it's going to do the job. You don't get out every minute and try and check the engine to see if it's still working. You just know that's what it's designed to do. But you need to drive it the right way. And if you don't drive it the right way, if you don't know how to drive it, and you've got the handbrake on and you haven't switched the engine on, or you're doing something, you're going to have problems. So it's exactly the same with our life. Our brain is a machine that is biologically programmed and designed to give us everything we want in our life for us to be the best that we can be, including the happiest. But if we're not getting that, and if we've got problems and things going wrong, it can only biologically and logically be because we're not using this machine the right way. And what I've discovered is that the brain has a very particular structure. There's 4 parts. I've created a 4-part brain model. And it's simply a case of understanding what these 4 parts are, because 99% of people are using the wrong part of their brain, and that's the only reason they're not getting the results they want. It's not about having to learn a lot of stuff and having to come up with a new technique or a new method. I mean, I did try all of those, to be fair, or a lot of them. And that's why I was puzzled why they didn't work, because I'd missed this fundamental thing. You can do all of these other things, but if you're not using the basic machinery the right way, if you're not engaging the correct part of your brain, it's just not going to work. But once you do that, things work in a much, much easier and more enjoyable way.
Yes, that's amazing. And I think like sometimes I feel like a lot of what I read too is the brain actually, if you're not using it the correct way, it will keep you stuck. You know, it will keep you there
It's
because you're
designed
not
to.
using it in the right fashion.
It's designed to keep you
Yes.
stuck if
Yes.
you're not using it the right.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I could talk about the brain and neuroscience and subconscious reprogramming for hours. So, and you've kind of already answered this question, but I will go ahead and ask it in case you have anything else to elaborate on. So, what are the most significant lessons you've learned throughout your life, and how have they shaped you as a person?
Well, the most significant lesson I've learned is to learn how to let go, and I mean really let go, because and letting go, this isn't a question. It's not a question of faith and hope, because most of the time people say, "Well, I'll let go," but what they're really doing is they're hoping that things will work out, and they're thinking, but by saying they're letting go, that they are, but they're not. But there's a very specific thing happens biologically when you let go, because you see, essentially the way your brain works is you've got two parts that are competing all of the time, well, not all of the time, but a lot of the time to run your life. Now, there's one part of your brain that when you use it, it keeps you stuck, because this part of your brain is only designed for one purpose, and that is to protect you for any threat or danger that comes into your life, a physical threat or danger. But it doesn't have any ability, that's all it's designed for. It has no awareness of anything other than to react and help and make you instantly get out of a danger, like run away or jump out of the way or whatever. But there's another part of your brain, this is what I call the creative brain, but this is a physical location inside our head, and this has been described by more and more science is catching up with identifying this part of the brain, but it's been described in spiritual traditions for centuries, for thousands of years. But it's what I call the creative brain. And the creative brain is the part of your brain that's designed to run your life. And it's designed, it's where your creativity is, as my word suggests, but it's a lot more than that, because it's also where your intuition is. It's where you get those gut feelings that you know you should do something or you shouldn't do something. It's all of your problem solving ability is in this part of your brain. This part of your brain also is where all your motivation lies. And it's also where your inspiration and where you find, we have this expression, many people have described this state when you're using your creative brain as being in the flow, being in the zone, when things are just flowing in your life without resistance. That is your natural biological state. That is homeostasis, is activating this part of your brain. But what stops that part of your brain from operating is when you activate this other part, the survival stuck part. And how you do that is in how you feel. So your feelings are actually an indication as to which part of your brain is being activated. So what's really going on, and I teach all this in a lot more detail, and really the most difficult thing about this is to understand how simple it is. But
Mhm.
what's really going on is when your brain is when you have a subconscious, when you trigger a subconscious fear. Now, most of us have got subconscious fears, which is fears that we don't even know we have, obviously. That's why we call them subconscious. But what goes on inside the brain biologically is that there are triggers, and they can be external or internal, that activate the response to these subconscious fears. And when we do that, we feel stress, worry, anxiety, frustration, anger. These are all a biological indication from your brain that a subconscious fear is being triggered. Now, when you activate so when all those things are triggered, all those feelings, that activates this what I call the survival part of the brain, the reactive part, and that's the part that keeps you stuck. And when you're in that state, you don't know what to do. You're confused, and you say to yourself, "I can't think straight. I don't know what to do." And you ask yourself questions like, what should I do with my life? What should my goal be? What's the next thing I need to do? How can I figure this out? Why aren't things going well? Now, your brain doesn't have the answers to it. That part of your brain doesn't have any of the answers to those questions, because all of the answers to those questions are in this other part of your brain. But this part of your brain is not activated by these triggers which create fear, stress, worry, and anxiety. So it's really simple. All you need to do is, and this is what I work with people, uncover what your subconscious fears are, find out what the triggers are, and there's usually not that many of them, and we have a lot of conscious control over what we allow to trigger this part of our brain, stop those triggers from happening, and you naturally, that's the great part about it. Once you do that, you just allow things to happen, and it all just goes along, because this creative brain, even with us not being aware of it, it can finally get to work and do its job and get on with giving you everything you need and want truly to be your happiest and best that you can be.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, I love everything you just said. I think that I mean, thank goodness that you learned this lesson, because I can just tell by listening to you that you are such a good teacher of all of this information. So I definitely look forward to even reading more about you and just figuring all the things out. And you can really tell, like, you should really listen to the people that have been there, done that, right? Like, most of the time, like, you're with your story, it's like I had everything I wanted, but I wasn't happy. So I'm going to figure out how to live my dreams and live my life and be truly happy, and then help other people do it. So I definitely, you're an inspiration for sure.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so what inspires you and motivates you to keep going even when faced with challenges? Is it your creative brain?
I don't have any challenges in my life. I don't know what that means. Do you mean obstacles or something? I just let my life flow. I mean, it's funny, one of the big myths and misconceptions that we've been so drilled in, and I hope this isn't going against what you teach, I'm sure it isn't, but we've been drilled into this idea that we all have to know what we want, and we have to set goals, and we have to have plans and go after them. But if anyone had said to me when I was lying on the sofa in my in my mother's apartment in the living room, you're going to end up sailing around the world in your own yacht for 8 years. You're going to do all these amazing things. You're going to find this incredible romantic relationship, unlike what you've ever had before. And you're going to be sharing all of this information about how we're designed to live naturally and how biologically it works and how simple it is. You're going to be sharing that with people around the world. Now, if anybody had said that to me, or if I'd come up with that idea, I would have thought that was absolutely crazy. And not just because I didn't think it was possible, which I certainly wouldn't have, but also because I didn't know that's what I wanted. And the problem is, when we're in the state of trying to figure it all out, trying to work out what our goals are, for a start, we're using the wrong part of our brain that doesn't really know, because when we're doing that, we're usually in a state of lack and we're frustrated on some level and thinking, well, for me to be happy, I need something other than I don't have at the moment, or don't already have. So not only is it that, but we're not designed to know what our ultimate goals are, because that's not the way we work biologically. And the way I figured this out was, so I'm really answering the question as to how I'm living my dreams. I live my dreams the natural way. Think of this for an example. There's another law of nature, which is what I call the law of biological efficiency. And what that means is, and nature, the amazing thing is, if you read any of the works of Charles Darwin or any of these biological evolutionists who study how biology has evolved over millions of years, what they all realize is that nature has had billions of years to work all this stuff out, and to get rid of all of the problems and the inefficiencies about making organisms the best that they can be, so that they have the greatest chance for survival. So nature is incredibly efficient. It works absolutely perfectly with the least amount of effort. And that makes sense, doesn't it? Because even if you think about us or any living thing, you want to expend the least amount of energy, because you might not get another food source for a few weeks. So it's all about conservation of energy, and it's all about getting the maximum result. So when you apply this to the idea of, because people say to me, well, how do I know what I really want in my life so that I can go after it? And I say, well, here's the thing. If your brain, this creative part of your brain, which has all of your higher faculties, your higher awarenesses, everything you need to really make a difference in the world and in your life, if your brain if suddenly you woke up and suddenly thought, yes, here I am on my mother's couch. My goal is to sail around the world on my own yacht, and that's what I'm going to do. Now, if you'd been given that goal, what would you do? Or some other completely out of the, way out there goal that you'd never thought of? What would you do? You'd start to doubt, and you start to question, and you start to say, well, hang on, I don't want that. How do I know that that's what I want? How do I know that's what I would enjoy that? I don't even know if I would enjoy it. So you'd start to doubt it. And then your brain said, well, I'm going to show you the 20 steps to get there. And then you come up with this plan of 20 steps. And then what do? You look at them and you say, hang on, now would that work? Now, what happens if I do step number 2 and then it doesn't work that way and then I have to do something else? So you spend all of this time, you waste all of this time and energy. What are you doing? Nothing. You're not getting to where you're supposed to go. So the way your creative brain works is it only shows you one step at a time. It shows you the very next step, because biologically, the most efficient way for you to get to where you're supposed to be is to take the next step. Not with thinking, not with trying to, strategize and plan it out. Just take the next step. I was talking to a billionaire who I interviewed some time ago. He's retired now, but he agreed with me, and several other people who I've read about have all said the same thing, that the most significant things in your life don't come from a goals list. They come from who knows where. They just show up. People who write music or paint or do great things or come up with a business idea, they just get the idea. They don't know where it comes from. They all say, I don't know where it comes from. And this billionaire friend, he had a business. He had 1 million customers around the world in 85 countries. He had 2 private jets. He had 500 staff. He was making hundreds of millions of dollars. And he said, Liam, I never would have put that on a goals list. I wouldn't have had a clue that this is what I'd end up with. So we need to realize this. We need to stop doing this goals list thing, trying to figure stuff out, because that's not allowing our creative brain to do that. It's going to do its job, and it is so simple. And if you want to see magic show up in your life, if you want to see synchronicities, and if you want your life to be a lot more productive, a lot easier, and a lot more fulfilling, you need to let go. You need to stop activating, you stop triggering this part of the brain that I'm talking about that's keeping you stuck, and allowing this other part of your brain to do the job. And as I say, that's when the miracles start showing up, and they keep showing up for me. And many people, when I help them with this, and they get this idea about uncovering what's triggering the wrong part of their brain and stopping the triggers. And they sometimes contact me later and they say, you're not going to believe what I'm doing now. And I say, oh, okay. And they're saying, well, I can't believe what I'm doing now, but I also can't believe how happy I am, how much better my life is. Why did I struggle for all of that time thinking that flogging that business or flogging that relationship or trying to make it all happen? Why did I think that was the way to go? It's such a liberating idea, because, and this is so simple, it's so natural, it's the way we're designed. And it doesn't take a lot of time to do this. Sometimes people, when they come and inquire, they say, oh, do I have to be on with your coaching or whatever, do I have to be on a Zoom call every week, or do I have to write down all of these things and go into all this heavy stuff? It's simply a question of identifying which part of your brain you're using, and then just allowing nature to take over. It really is that simple.
Yeah. I always say it's simple but not easy. Some of it. If you have somebody to guide you, it definitely helps. But I think like what
Well,
you're
the
saying,
reason it's not yeah.
good.
Oh, very good. The reason it's not easy is we've developed all the wrong habits. I mean, is if you want to lose weight, it's very simple what to do. Stop eating the wrong food, you eat the right food, and you do some exercise. Dead simple. But we've gotten such bad habits about doing that, it's not easy. So it's exactly the same. But the great news is it is simple. And once you click with this, which doesn't necessarily take very long, as I say, sometimes it's happened in minutes when people have worked on this. Sometimes it takes longer, of course. But once you get it, it's like something you learn that you can't unlearn. It's once you've learned to drive a car, you can't unlearn it. So and that's when the magic, as I said, starts to happen.
Absolutely. That's when you get unstuck and stay unstuck, it sounds like. So I think, I mean, everything you're saying is right on point with what I teach as well. And I think that the main thing that I try to focus on, and you tell me if you agree with this or not, but I don't try to focus on the what or the how I'm trying to envision, right? I focus on the feeling that I'm going to get when I get there. And that for me just so happens to be peace and freedom, right? Like just that's what I focus on when I'm doing visualizations and things. So do you agree with that?
Well, I make it even simpler, to be honest, and
Okay.
that is I don't visualize anything. I
Okay.
don't think about, because when you project an outcome, when you're attached to an outcome, You
Mhm.
are attached. When you see something, you say, well, I think I'd like that, or I think that would make me happy, or I really want that. You're attached to that outcome. You're not saying, I don't know what the outcome is. Maybe it's far greater than that. So instead of being attached to the outcome, it's to be attached to the process. And the process is simply to be very, people talk about mindfulness, being present. And this is what being present really is. It's being focused on how am I feeling right now? Which part of my brain am I activating? And when you get good at this, you do it automatically without thinking because you slip into this natural way of living. And instead of saying, I think I want something, see what shows up. That's what's really incredible. And that's how you really are, how you really let go. I don't care. So what you're basically saying is, I don't care what happens because I know it's all going to be good. But to really know that and to act that, you have to use a certain part of your brain. But the great thing is, then you start to see miracles and magic show up in your life. You know, I think a really good exercise for anyone watching or listening is, and I mentioned this briefly before, is to say, think of anything really significant that's happened to you in your life, something that's made a big change. And for most people, or many people, it's perhaps meeting the person that you end up marrying, or who becomes your life partner and you have children with, or whatever. Now, the question to ask is, if you think back to when you met that person, just before you met them, the day before or whenever, did you expect to meet them? In other words, did you sit down and say, or did you have this vision or whatever, or this goal, tomorrow I'm going to meet my partner, my husband or my wife, we're going to get married, we're going to have this number of children, we're going to live in this place, and we're going to have this life together, and they're going to look like this, and this is what they're going to be. You don't do any of that stuff. They just show up. All of the significant things in our life actually are not the result of us working and visualizing. They just show up. So what's at work there? Is it just luck? Is it a fluke? No, it's this part of your brain at work saying, I know what you want. You don't know what you want, but I do,
Yeah.
which is a bit weird because it is all you, but it's a different part of your brain at work saying, look, just let go and trust me. And the other interesting thing, I don't know, I'm sure many of your listeners are probably religious and maybe Christians. And I thought, where have I heard this thing before about fear keeping you stuck by when you trigger it and activating the wrong part of your brain? And I thought, well, I've heard that in the Bible. In fact, in the Bible, it says 365 times, be not afraid. Those three words, 365 times. In other words, don't trigger this part of your brain. Now, it's not saying that because it says, well, you'll feel better if you're not afraid, or, you won't be so unhappy or whatever. This is an instruction on how your brain works. And so we've been told this through religion. Don't activate fear. And also, what does it say in the Bible? It says, do not worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow will take care of itself. Do not worry about what you shall eat, drink, or wear. It will all be provided. It doesn't say have a goals list. The same gentleman that I was telling you about, who had the million customers, very successful business, he put it well. He said, setting goals is self-sabotage. That literally is what it is, because all of the magic happens when you really let go and know that what shows up is going to be great. You don't need to figure it out in advance, and you never can figure it out, because if you try and figure it out, all you're basing your thinking on is what you already know. But if it could be something way outside of your experience that you're destined to do and to have, and that can only come from your creative brain.
Yes. Awesome. Yeah, those are definitely enlightening for sure. I love that. I think that most people do get stuck in that. They want to control their lives and they want to make sure that they do have a certain amount of kids. Their husband or wife looks like this. And I mean, like you said, that's exactly what's going to keep you and get you stuck. So, yeah, love it. Absolutely love it. And
It's all
every time
about.
you're getting ready to say something, I'm like, oh, yep, that's exactly what I was going to say. So you're taking the words right out of my mouth in a lot of instances. I love it.
That's great. Well, it
Yeah.
is the truth, isn't it? And why do people want to plan out their life? It's that thing I talk about before, unconscious fear. Unconscious fear is, if you have any problems in your life, if your life is not flowing perfectly the way it should be biologically and naturally, it's because you have some unconscious fears lurking around that are keeping you stuck. And that's literally the way it works. If you want to get unstuck, you have to find out what those fears are and stop triggering them.
Absolutely. I have a tattoo on my arm that says love over fear. Choose love, don't choose the fear. Figure out what the fear is and get rid of it.
Yeah,
Operate out
yeah.
of love.
Let it go.
Awesome. So, what do you hope to leave behind in the world as your legacy?
You're asking me all these questions that never really occur to me. I'm here to be the best that I can be, and I'm doing my best, if you like, just to allow whatever's meant to happen to happen. So I don't have any projections for any legacy. I just want to be here right now with whoever I'm with, which is always with myself. And if there's someone else in the picture as well, or whatever circumstance I'm in, I want to be in the flow of this moment and allow everything else to work out in the most natural, perfect way, because I know that it will. As long as my job really is to manage my flow state right now. That's the only thing I'm here to do. And if you look around nature, that's all nature does. You don't, a bird is not sitting there trying to figure out how it's going to get its next food. It just gets its next food. It's right in the moment and allows its life to unfold. So again, I'm not really giving any simple answers to these questions because they're a little bit out of my, not the way I think, I guess, but in terms of if there's a legacy to be left, it's what it's meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and just being the best version of yourself creates that, right? It creates exactly what you want to leave behind. So I think they're great answers. Even if they don't, even if they're not questions you would normally ask yourselves, that's what I do, right? That's what we do is try to get other people thinking, right? And then your answers are giving listeners so many different insights into how life really works.
Yeah, because I think we tend to overthink everything. We tend to also think that the part of our brain, I said there are four parts of the brain, there's a thinking part of your brain as well, which is separate from your creative brain. But we use this brain, the thinking brain, for all the wrong things. We use that to try and figure stuff out. That's not what it's there for. A lot of the stuff we can't figure out. We're not designed to. We're not here to figure stuff out. We're here to enjoy this moment and be the best that we can be and actually, experience what we have rather than being away in our thoughts trying to figure things out and trying to plan ahead. And I know people say, well, you mean that means I should never do any planning? Only if planning is appropriate. Sometimes obviously you need to plan some things, like if you're going to build a house, well, you need to figure out how many nails you need and all that sort of thing. But it's a much more of a natural organic process rather than being fixated on saying I have to plan my life. You don't have to plan your life. Your brain already has a plan for your life. And one of the reasons we know this is because we have this stuff inside every cell of our body called DNA. And what DNA is, without getting into the technical chemical description, it's basically a blueprint for who you are. It has 250 million pieces of information about who you are. Now, you don't know 250 million things about yourself, but your brain does. And your brain's job is to express those 250 million pieces of information, your blueprint, in the best way possible, the most natural way possible. So that's why you need to let it do its job to do that.
Yeah. So this next question is probably going to bring up somewhat of the same answer just because it is I already know what you're going to tell me, but I'm going to ask it anyways. So is there
Okay.
anything that you would tell people, or is there one action you can take every day to get closer to where you want to be? Because it already sounds like you're exactly where you are, where you want to be, and exactly what's meant for you. So do you have an answer for that question?
Well, there's something people can do, and maybe there's a lot more explanation to it, but it's something, if people are listening, and often people want to say, what's one thing I can do to start using my brain the right way, and so that I get good, synchronicities and good and the magic's starting to happen in my life, and I can really start to let go a lot more. And so one simple thing to do, not necessarily easy, but it is simple, is to say, what in my life is triggering me to feel bad that I can stop allowing to be in my life? Because we have all these things that when we do them, they don't make us feel good. And we just think, oh, well, that's part of life. I have to accept that. And it makes me feel stressed or afraid or worried, whatever it is. You actually have the choice. So one of the things, or a couple of things you can do on a really practical level, turn off the news,
Hmm.
because the news makes you feel bad, doesn't it? Now, you don't need to know what's going on. Everyone else, if anything you need to know, if there's anything you need to know, you'll find out about it. But realize that the mere fact that you're watching something that's making you feel bad is activating the wrong part of your brain. So you have that choice. You can switch off the news. Try it for a day, try it for a week. And what you'll start to see is you'll start to experience life in a different way. You'll start to see things in a different way, in a much better way, because you were starting to use a different part of your brain. You also have the choice. Say you're in a conversation with somebody and you don't like the topic, or you don't even like the person you're talking to. Say to yourself, "Oh, I need to change the subject," or say to yourself, "I'm sorry, I have to end this conversation. I have to go away and I have to go and watch some paint dry." Say something to get out of it. You have the choice to do that. So be very mindful of what you're allowing yourself to experience. It's making you feel bad, and remembering that on a biological level, if you feel bad, it's going to keep you stuck. And you have the choice in so many instances not to feel bad. You can switch off the news. You can end a conversation. You can end a relationship. You can end a business. You can end a job. You can do all of these things. And people say, well, that's a bit drastic. Well, it may or may not be. But the stakes are very high. The stakes are you going to stay stuck using the wrong part of your brain with all of these triggers? And there are a whole lot more triggers. These are just a few simple ones of the more obvious ones. Are you going to stay stuck for the rest of your life because of that? Or are you going to have the courage and really change the habit of saying, I'm just not going to allow negativity to trigger this part of my brain anymore, and let go and allow and see what shows up.
Yeah.
And good stuff will if you do that.
Oh, absolutely. Love that. That was the last question that I have for today. Is there anything else? You've explained so much and taught us so much. Is there anything else that you would like to say to our listeners for today?
But not really. I just want to, I guess it's just about making the point that this really is a very simple process. People say, oh, I have to learn all of this new stuff, and it's another technique, and it's another method, or I have to, meditate for hours a day, or I have to recite something or figure out something. It's nothing like that at all. It's just a very simple shift in awareness, shift in understanding that really changes your life. And as I said right at the beginning, I went from really trying to learn everything. I mean, I had an amazing library of books, spiritual and self-help and all of these books. And I'd done courses and seminars, and, I had cassette tapes in those days, and, all sorts of stuff, videos that I watched religiously. I had a ton of information, but it's only when I gave up all that stuff and tried a simpler approach, that's when it really started to come together. So I think that, to me, is the message I'm trying to communicate. This is really simple when you get it, and it makes all the difference.
Yeah, love that. Thank you so much for joining today and teaching us all the simple lessons.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me, Tricia.
Yeah, you're welcome.